tonight. So, with great pleasure, joining me now, we bring in Senator Ted Cruz. As always, Senator Cruz, it's wonderful to see you again. I'm sorry I didn't give you a better stock market today, but that could take a couple of years, heavens knows. I want to ask you this question. You're a good economic thinker, as well as other areas.
Thank you.
With respect to the November election, sir, in your judgment, what is going to be more important? Inflation and a slumping economy, or Roe v. Wade? What do you think?
Well, if you look at polling right now, inflation is dominating the #1 concern of voters. Right behind that is crime. Right behind that is illegal immigration. So those right now are what the voters are telling us are their top 3 concerns. Look, Roe versus Wade, there are a lot of Democrats and a lot of folks in the corporate media that are hoping if the Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade, that it will magically prevent the red tidal wave that is happening in November. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're getting the politics entirely wrong. One of the things to understand, if the court does in fact overturn Roe versus Wade, that doesn't mean abortion is immediately illegal all over the country. What it means is that the decision-making on abortion returns to the elected legislatures, primarily in the states. That means in bright blue states like New York or California, at least in the short term, it is certain that abortion will remain universally available on demand. And so for many of the furthest left voters in states like that, they will find little to nothing change in their day-to-day lives. For people in redder states, states like my home state of Texas, we will see meaningful restrictions on abortion. And those will vary state by state depending on the values and the mores of the citizens of those states. That's how the Constitution envisions these kind of issues being decided, is having different resolutions, because the people of Texas want something different than the people of California. And, you know, I will say, Larry, it is ironic. We're seeing Democrats engaging in histrionics about the prospect of Roe being overturned. And my favorite talking point they use is they say it's an assault on democracy, which is richly ironic because it's precisely the opposite. It is a victory for democracy, because what the Democrats are saying is they don't want the voters to be able to set the rules on abortion. They want 9 unelected lawyers wearing robes to decree the answers for the entire country. And the reason Democrats are so upset is they recognize that an awful lot of voters in America disagree with their radical and extreme views on abortion, and given the choice, will vote in different laws.
Come back to the inflation economic slump. What did folks say? I mean, you're from Texas. Texas is one of the growthiest states in the union, unregulated by and large, no income tax, and so forth and so on. The center of the oil and gas business, which is fabulous. But what are you hearing back home? Because, you know, a day like today in the stock market is rough stuff. My concern, I'll be honest with you, Senator, and I'm not always right about this stuff, but I think we have a long, tough road ahead of us because of mistakes made in the past year and a half, you know, by the federal government as well as by the Federal Reserve Board. I don't think the market has bottomed. I don't think market interest rates have peaked, to be candid with you. And I think it's going to be hard to get inflation back down. What are you hearing, and what are you thinking about as a senior member of the Senate?
Look, that is very much what I'm hearing on the ground in Texas and all across the country. Inflation is something that people see every day. They're confronted with every day. And the people that get hurt the most are those on fixed incomes, those with limited income. Particular seniors get hammered with inflation, because if your income each month stays the same, and yet the cost of everything goes up, the cost of food goes up, the cost of rent goes up, the cost of electricity goes up, the cost of lumber goes up, the cost of buying a home goes up, and most visibly, the cost of gasoline skyrockets. Listen, right now in Texas, there's a mom coming home who's spending $100 to fill her minivan. Right now in Nebraska, there's a farmer driving home who's spending $150 to fill his truck. And that hits right at home. It hits, and there's a reason why, if you look at Biden's poll numbers and Democrats' poll numbers, that virtually every demographic you can think of is galloping towards Republicans. Young people, are galloping towards Republicans. Hispanics are galloping towards Republicans. We're seeing African Americans moving towards Republicans. We're seeing blue-collar working-class voters moving towards Republicans. And we're seeing suburban women moving towards Republicans. And the reason is simple. All of those groups of people are feeling the pain, the disaster of Biden and Harris and the Democrats' failed socialist policies. And you and I have talked about this before. I think Biden is in many ways Jimmy Carter 2.0, with the same failures we saw in the 70s, and that obviously led to stagflation. We've got half of the stagflation right now with the inflation, and I fear the stagnation is right behind it. That imposed an enormous amount of pain on Americans for several years, but the good news is it also ushered in the Reagan Revolution, and it took Jimmy Carter to give us Reagan. I think Joe Biden, we may well name Joe Biden the Republican of the Year, because when all is said and done, I think Biden will have elected more Republicans maybe than any person who's ever lived.
So I shouldn't bring him before the Misinformation Government Board because he's going to be the Republican guy of the year? Let me ask you something, Senator. Honestly, a serious point, though. Coming back to the inflation issue, all right, predominantly it's too much money printing, but, as you well know, it's also too much government spending and borrowing. So I just have this dream. My dream goes like this. There's a $350 billion corporate pork subsidies, industrial policy handouts with a lot of Green New Deal. It's called the China Compete or some bloody thing. $350 billion, and 18 Republican senators voted for it in the first go-around. Is it possible, and can we ask the Republicans to not vote for this as a blow against inflation, as well as terrible industrial, corporate welfare, industrial policy? I mean, we don't want to out-China China here, but we don't want to out-inflation also.
No, that's exactly right. As you know, I was one of the senators who voted no and enthusiastically voted no, because the last thing we need with inflation galloping like it is to spend hundreds of billions of dollars more. And by the way, we're not going to compete with China by having more and more government spending and more debt and more inflation and hammering our economy. We're going to compete with China by unleashing free enterprise, by cutting taxes, by pulling back job-killing regulations and letting the free market, letting free enterprise beat the communist economy. That's how we won the Cold War. That's also how we're going to beat China. And listen, if you look at the volume of spending, you know, I was talking with just a woman in the airport the other week who was talking about, she was a single mom from New Jersey who was flying on a plane, and she was saying, inflation is just hammering me. And she says, do you think Congress is going to do anything to fix it? And I told her, I said, listen, this Congress isn't. As long as Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi are in office, they want to spend more, they want to tax more, they want to borrow more, and they want to print more money. And it was interesting, this woman said, well, what is causing inflation? And at the end of the day, it's not complicated. You and your viewers understand, listen, prices are just a relative means of comparing the value of one good versus the other. We started out in a barter economy that if I had apples and you had bananas, and we knew that the exchange rate was 2 apples for 1 banana, I could bring 2 apples, trade you for a banana, and we'd both have more fruit. That got complicated, carrying apples and bananas everywhere you went and knowing the relative exchange rates of everything. Money steps in and is a uniform comparison that if you know that an apple is $1 and a banana is $2, it sets the relative value of everything. But to use this very simple example, if you double the number of dollars on planet Earth, then roughly speaking, an apple will be $2 and a banana will be $4. That's what's happening here, is the government is massively increasing the money supply, and that drives the prices of everything up.
Both spending and Federal Reserve money creation, which is why I'm sort of begging the Republican Party regarding this bill and other domestic spending, let's not create any more bananas. I mean, a lot of bananas are going to add up to a big turkey. I mean, if the cavalry is going to come, Ted, Senator, if the cavalry is coming, which is great, I just want to make sure that we know, and the viewers know, and the voters know that the cavalry will be in the right direction. You follow me? I mean, we got a signal here, and so far the signals are a little watered down. I think you would agree.
I do follow you, but I sure hope the Ministry of Truth doesn't have a metaphor police, because after the bananas, the turkey, and the cavalry, I think we'd both be in trouble there.
Well, that's the benefits or whatever of a Princeton education for both of us. Let me move on. You've made a great statement. Senator Cruz blames Supreme Court leak on one little woke left-wing twit. That's fabulous, really good. But I do want to ask you a serious question. The other headline I'm seeing in the papers, White House refuses to condemn the betrayal at the Supreme Court. They seem, from Madam Psaki, but also others, completely unencumbered by the corruption of the leak of Justice Alito's report, memo, opinion.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that, and I want to get your take on this. Isn't the leak itself important? I know the policy is, but what about the leak?
Look, this is yet another consequence of the Democratic Party being radicalized and taken over by the extreme revolutionary socialist left. And they're willing to destroy institutions. You're seeing Senate Democrats trying to blow up the filibuster, to destroy the filibuster in pursuit of their socialist agenda. This is that same agenda applied to the court. You know, I've got to say, the fact that a draft opinion was leaked before the court decided the case is the gravest violation of the oath and the obligation that law clerks have to the court in the history of the Supreme Court and the history of our nation. As you know, I started my career as a law clerk at the Supreme Court, clerking for Chief Justice William Rehnquist. And the secrecy of deliberations and opinions is right at the heart of the court being able to do its job. It's never happened in over 2 centuries, and no one could even imagine it. I got to say, when the news broke, I stared at my phone in disbelief, stunned, because some woke lefty twit decided to hell with my obligations to my justice, to hell with my obligations to the Supreme Court or to the rule of law, and decided instead to try to use political pressure to politicize the court. And this is the result of the Democrats' multi-year campaign to politicize the court, to attack the court. That's included Chuck Schumer standing on the steps of the court, threatening justices by name, saying they've unleashed the whirlwind and just wait to see what's going to hit them. And to see Jen Psaki say, well, we don't have an opinion on the leak.
I know.
My God, you've got a responsibility. And you know what? Joe Biden used to be the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Somewhere, to the extent his brain is aware of what's going on, he knows how shameful it is that his White House is standing up there saying, we have no opinion on law clerks leaking draft Supreme Court opinions. That undermines the rule of law. It is horrific. And Joe Biden should be ashamed of himself and walk out and say, damn straight we have an opinion, this is wrong, and we're not interested in burning the Supreme Court to the ground. But he's too afraid to do that because he doesn't want to tick off the radicals and the leftists in his party.
Yeah, and he likes to throw fear out there. Fear that things are going to happen that, as you said earlier, will not happen if Alito's opinion goes through. And of course, as you know, Biden was pro-life and was against Roe v. Wade for the first couple decades of his career. Anyway, Senator Ted Cruz, thank you, sir. We appreciate it, as always.
Thank you, Larry.
You bet.